Some of you know that in addition to reading and writing true crime, I also write fiction and love reading books of all kinds. So when I got an email about a local author publishing a suspense thriller novel, I wanted to interview her for a bonus episode of this podcast. Today I'm chatting with North Carolina resident Hope Andersen, who has a fascinating and inspirational personal story and writing career. If you think you're too old to accomplish your goals, Hope's story will convince you otherwise. If you'd rather just stick to the true crime content we normally provide, I understand, and we will be back next week with a brand new episode. There is much to love about North and South Carolina, but the two states have also had their fair share of violent and senseless crimes over the years. From murders on the Blue Ridge Parkway, in the heart of big cities or sleepy college towns, and along the coastal waters, some of these stories may be new to you. Some may have happened in your town. Some may involve people that are still missing to this day, but all will leave you remembering to always be vigilant about the people you meet and the places you go. I'm Renee Robertson. Please join me for Missing in the Carolinas. Bonus episode, a conversation with Hope Andersen, North Carolina-based author of MotherLove and other works. Hope Andersen is a novelist, poet, memoirist, and screenwriter. Her published novels include The Book Sisters, When the Moon Winks, and Where the Wind Blows. MotherLove is her first suspense novel. A New England native, she now lives in North Carolina with her husband of over 35 years, Tom. They have 3 grown children, 2 dogs, and a cat. You can follow her on Instagram at hcanderson828, find her on Facebook at Magic with a Bite, or visit her website, lionstoothllc.org. Here's a synopsis of MotherLove, Hope's latest novel. For the past year, Rebecca Winslow's life has been plagued by one disaster after another: the loss of her stillborn child, the disappearance of her younger sister, and the hopelessness of her toxic marriage to a narcissist who doesn't understand her grief. By chance, Rebecca stumbles on a clue in the search for her sister, which leads her to St. Croix. Despite her fears, she boards a plane for the island. En route, she meets a singer named Monique Lafleur, a native of the island, who quickly becomes her greatest champion and friend. Once on St. Croix, Rebecca finds her sister lying in a coma under police surveillance because her sister is a suspect in the murder of a notorious sex trafficker. With Monique's help, Rebecca advocates for her sister while unknowingly altering her own reality in the process. Rebecca brings her sister home with her, hoping for both physical and emotional healing. What transpires is just the opposite. Spine-chilling discoveries occur, which Rebecca must face in order to be released from her despair. Hi, Hope, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's fun to be here.
I'm really excited about this discussion. You have a very interesting story about your life as a writer, including making the decision to stop writing after you got sober. Could you tell us more about that and what prompted you to begin writing again?
Sure. When I got sober, I had already had a little bit of success as a writer. I had had some pieces published and a play produced at a theater in Boston and, odds and ends done. When I got sober, I didn't think that I could continue to be creative without some kind of lubricant fueling my creative juices. And really, what that boiled down to was discovering that I had a very strong streak of perfectionism that was underlying my drunkenness, if you want to call it that, my alcoholism, and that was what was the block, the major block that was keeping me and kept me from writing for a number of years. During that, it was basically a 40-year block that I went through from my early 20s until I was 60. And I did do a few pieces then. I did do some ghost writing during that period, and I wrote a couple of screenplays. And, I'm sure I wrote some poetry because I've never stopped writing poetry, but I wasn't really engaged in writing as a career or anything like that. I was actually a school teacher. What happened in 2015 when I started really writing was that my husband had gotten very ill earlier in 2012. He had all kinds of problems. He had cirrhosis of the liver and hemocratic encephalopathy and all kinds of other liver related things. He had acute liver cancer and he was very, very ill. And in fact, in by the time 2015 rolled around, we had gone down to Mayo Clinic to get a second opinion. He had been working with a doctor in Charlotte, and they had him on the transplant list, but we were getting nowhere on that. So we went down to the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville. They did a series of tests, and then they told us he has 3 months to live. So get your affairs in order, say your goodbyes because there's nothing we can do for you. And that was an absolute blow to the gut. And we came back to Charlotte and, you know, kind of got adjusted to the fact that here he was going to be dead in 3 months. And then his original hospital called us back and said, we don't believe that what they told you. We're continuing to have you on the transplant list. And within 2 weeks of that diagnosis from Mayo, he had a new liver and he recovered. I mean, he bounced back. He within it seemed like months. He was a certified personal trainer. He was in the gym every day. He was, you know, up and about and starting his whole new life with this new liver. And my kids were all out of the house. They had all grown up and were gone. And I wasn't teaching anymore. I didn't have a job. And I was left in this very uncomfortable place of having nothing in my life. I mean, I was still married and I still had kids, but nobody needed me anymore. And so I kind of went to the universe and I said, what am I supposed to do? And the message I heard back was right. So I went with my husband to a conference that he was attending, and I brought two marble notebooks and I wrote the entire draft, first draft of one of my novels called When the Moon Winks. And it obviously went through many edits from the time I wrote it in then I think it was 2015, and it wasn't published till 2019. But but that's how I got back into writing. And really, I wrote that book, and then I did not stop. Um, I did a book called The Book Sisters, which was self-published before When the Moon Winks came out. I did a book of poetry called Taking in Air. After I wrote When the Moon Winks, I wrote the sequel, which was Where the Wind Blows. Then I wrote this was during COVID, I wrote a memoir called How to Remodel a Life. And also during COVID, I began to work on what became MotherLove. So I produced another book of poetry during COVID called Postcards from a Loving God. So I became very, very creative when I hit 60, and I kind of haven't stopped since.
You were making up for lost time.
I was making up for lost time, all those years wasted.
Oh, I wouldn't say that, but that is a great inspirational story for anyone who thinks, "Oh, I'm too old to do this." And
Oh no, you're never too old.
I even tell myself that I'm 48 and still trying to get that first novel published, coming really close, but I still tell myself, "Am I too old to be trying to do this?" And then I hear a story like yours, and it
Yeah,
gives me
absolutely
hope.
not. I mean, I'm going to turn 70 this year, and I'm working on a Christmas screenplay right now, and I'm waiting to start my sequel to Mother Love, and I just have so many ideas, and all I can do is pray every morning that I live another 20 years so I can get all this stuff done that I want to do.
I love that. So, yes, you briefly mentioned your other four books that you've written, and we'd love to
Yeah,
know a little bit more about those.
sure. The first three, The Book Sisters, When the Moon Winks, and Where the Wind Blows, are all women's fiction. The Book Sisters is more kind of historical women's fiction, story of some six sisters growing up in the Midwest in the 1960s to the present day, and it's rooted in many of the historical events that took place in that time period. Um, When the Moon Winks is more of a romantic comedy. It's the story of a 60-year-old woman whose husband leaves her on their 30th wedding anniversary, and she goes out and she reinvents her life, and she starts out by looking up old boyfriends, which all falls flat. And then she goes on and she realizes, okay, love is an inside job. If I'm going to find love, I need to love myself. So she sets about in this book discovering who she is and doing that by having lots of adventures. And of course, she finds somebody, and the happily ever after ending with that relationship is in the sequel, when the wind blows. Yeah. So,
Okay.
and then How to Remodel a Life, the subtitle to that is A Guide to Living Well with Alcoholism and Bipolar Disorder. I am a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober since 1981. And I was diagnosed when I had about 20 years of sobriety with bipolar disorder. And I'm in remission, from that. I've been uh, religious about taking my medication and taking care of myself over the years. And what that book does is it tells my story of those illnesses, but it also, at the end of each chapter, provides a toolkit of the tools that I've used over the 40 some years that I've been sober to be in recovery and to recover from those diseases. So it's both a memoir and a self help book. And then the poetry books are all rooted in nature, uh, God, and family. That's kind of the themes that I address in those poetry books.
That's a great variety of literature. Great body of work.
Yeah, I don't like doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I get that. I completely get that.
Yeah.
So, segueing into that, Mother Love is your first foray into the suspense thriller genre, it sounds like.
Yes.
Where'd you get the inspiration for that story?
Well, during COVID, there are two things that happened. One, during COVID, my younger daughter said, Mom, you should read some of these women thriller writers. They're really good. And I was like, I don't like thrillers. Because I think all the men thrillers that my husband reads and all the shoot 'em up, kill 'em up things. And I'm like, I'm
The
not into
spy
that.
novels.
Spy novels. I can appreciate some of them, and some of them are great writers, like Michael Connelly is just fantastic. Um, but she said, try Lisa Jewell, try Alice Feeney, try Mary Kubica, try these people. So I started reading and I fell in love with the genre. And at the same time, I had gone to my publisher and said, okay, we've got two Helen Ferry. She's the central character in When the Moon Winks. Um, we've got two books with her. So how about we do a third book? We set it during COVID, and she's trapped in this house with her family, and her way of getting away from the family and the grandchild is to go up in her study and to write a book. And so we'll do this third book as a book within a book. So my publisher was like, that sounds fantastic. Let's do that. That sounds really fun. Well, what happened was, as I started to do this and play back and forth between the story about Helen, in COVID, and then the book within the book, which was scenes from what became MotherLove, began to take on a life of its own. And it started to just say to me, I will not be somebody's little sister. I will not be, Cinderella in here. I'm going to be a standalone novel. So I had to listen to that. It just completely took over and became a book in its own right.
That is an amazing story. I love that. So, did you come across any challenges trying to write in this new genre after all that?
Yeah, I mean, writing a thriller, you have to be so attuned to the pacing. That's always true in any book you write, but especially in a thriller, the beats are so important. Where are you, where are you going to drop your clues? How much are you going to tell? How much are you not going to tell? How do you build suspense without giving away the whole shebang? And, it was just really a process of for me reading and rereading these other women who'd written these great books that did the job so well, and kind of trying to imitate in a way, although Mother Love is certainly my own original work, trying to capture what they captured in terms of the pacing and the beat of the book. I think finding the heartbeat of the book was the most challenging thing for me.
That is, I think that is really challenging within that genre.
Yeah.
So talking about the genre in general, who are some of your favorite authors and what would you recommend to our listeners?
I have a wide variety of authors that I love, but the most recent ones that I've been reading, I'll put plugs in for. I think my favorite book right now is Shelby Van Pelt's Remarkably Bright Creatures.
I
That,
love I love that book.
I mean, that book is so fantastic. I just love it. And I did a book signing at our book launch for Mother Love. I was at Barnes and Noble and I was doing this book signing, and the fellow who was interviewing me said, okay, so, what are some of your favorite books? Or what book would you say everybody should read? And I said, well, I would love to say they should read Mother Love, but really, I think they should read Remarkably Bright Creatures. And so he brought out a pile of books and everybody started buying those.
Oh, that was so
Bought my
nice.
book too. But anyway, so Elizabeth Strout, I don't know if you know her work.
I do.
Anything Can Happen. I just read that and was blown away by that book.
Okay.
Leif Enger, he wrote a book called Peace Like a River, which is just the most beautiful book. I think everybody should read that. Leif Enger, he's great. Um, and then William Kent Kruger, This Tender Land is another gorgeous book. Kind of people are kind of into James right now, the retelling of the Huckleberry Finn thing, and this book, This Tender Land, is kind of a riverboat story too, as well, with some kids who are orphaned and run away, and it's just a wonderful book. And then anything by Kristen Hanna, I love. She's just
I love her.
good. So, but I love to read. I mean, I read a lot of nonfiction as well, a lot of spiritual books, a lot of, I don't know, who did I just read? Eckhart Tolle, The Power of One, and Pema Chodron, and um, just people like that. I enjoy those books as well.
Yeah, that's a great variety. I mean, nobody wants to read the same things over and over again.
No, absolutely not.
So, in addition to writing, you also offer book coaching services to other writers with your company, Lion's Tooth Literary Services. What inspired you to assist other authors in this way, and how can you help them?
That's a good question. I realized as I went on through this process of publishing, self-publishing, hybrid publishing, traditional publishing, getting in touch with agents, applying for grants, just doing all kinds of things. I made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes. I learned a lot along the way. And I thought to myself, I want to help young, they don't have to be chronologically young, but young writers avoid making these same mistakes that I made. They can learn from my mistakes. I made them, they don't have to make them. And I really wanted to kind of share my experience and help people avoid the pitfalls that I fell into. Um, and a lot of what I discovered along the way, little gems that you discover along the way, like publications that can help, or sites, or all those things that took me a lot of research to find and uncover and explore. I can just give those to people right up front through my services, and they don't have to go through the hours and hours of grueling labor to find all that stuff. So, um, what I basically offer through my coaching services, I offer coaching, writing coaching. So, if you have an idea for a book, or you have a manuscript that you've got kind of in the very rough stages, I can coach you. And I say it's from concept to completion. I'll take you from the kernel of the idea right through to querying publishers. I don't guarantee that you're going to get published or picked up for a movie or anything like that, but I can take you the whole gamut through the process. Um, I also do developmental editing and copy editing, and I do ghostwriting, and I also do screenplay adaptation. I've done that for production companies, and I can take a novel and turn it into a screenplay for you. So those are the services that I offer, and all those services and fees and everything else can be found on my website, which is lionstoothllc.org. And that's a good place to see what I've got going on in terms of my books and how you can order them, and also my services and a little bit about me on there.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes to the podcast too, so people can just click right through to that.
Okay.
That sounds great, and it's a very helpful service because a lot of that stuff people don't realize. I've been doing this for a long time too, and a lot of people don't realize that there's a difference between copy editing and developmental editing.
Yeah.
You usually don't do all of that at once.
Yeah.
Usually the developmental editing comes before the copy editing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, but that's something you have to learn the hard way through many, many drafts and trial and error. But having
Yeah.
an editor tell you that up front will save you so much time and heartache
Yeah.
before
And
you
also
start sending
money.
something out.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think one of the things that I've learned is, there's everybody and his brother out there willing to sell you something. And I certainly learned the hard way that there are people who may say that they can do things for you, but it's not exactly what you're going to end up with. So,
Right. They may
yeah,
say that they're an agent, but then they turn
yeah,
around and charge you for editorial services,
which
which is
is
not supposed to be happening.
not supposed to be happening. No.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's tricky to navigate. I totally
Yep.
get it.
Yep.
But since this is a podcast about North and South Carolina, we must talk about what brought you to North Carolina and what you enjoy about living here.
Well, my husband's job actually brought us to North Carolina. I'm originally from New England, and I have lived in most of the New England states and never imagined myself living in the South. Although I did live in Maryland, which is a mid-Atlantic state, for part of my growing up. But um, yeah, so we moved here for my husband's job in 2007, I think it was. And I have really come to absolutely love North Carolina. I mean, we just spent the weekend in the mountains in Brevard and did so many nice hikes. And we went gem mining in Hiddenite a few weekends ago, and there's a beautiful state park. We're going to go up and go hiking there tomorrow. And the beaches are close by, and it's the weather. Actually, I love the weather down here. We have 4 seasons, and I don't find the summers unbearably hot. But then again, we have a pool, so I spend most of my time in the pool. But it's just, I just really, I love it. And I love kind of the slower pace. I know that the area that I live in Mooresville, is getting pretty built up, and the traffic is getting pretty intense, but still it's nothing like driving through Washington D.C. or New York City or Philadelphia. I mean, that's really a nightmare. So and Mooresville is still, even though it's growing, it's still got a nice cozy small downtown with a sweet little bookstore and a nice park and cute little galleries in it. And I just I just like this state. I think it's a very nice state, a very nice place to live. And uh, user friendly. I think it's user friendly state. So, and I love the plants that grow here, the native plants. I'm a gardener and I love what I can grow and the long growing season, as opposed to my sister in Vermont, who is only now beginning to be able to put her garden in because they had snow until May something. So, you know, I'm happy to be down here.
You're sold.
I'm sold. Yeah.
Yeah. What I love about just our general area is that I can go weeks without having to go into Charlotte. So, I don't love traffic myself. And while my husband works in Charlotte, so he doesn't have that luxury. I can I can just meander around and not have to hit any really heavy traffic. And like you said, 4 seasons, it's
Yeah.
no complaints either.
Yeah, I will say one of the things I miss about being in close proximity to New York City because we lived and Philadelphia because we lived in Princeton, New Jersey for a while is the museums in the city. And what we discovered when we went to house sit for my daughter who lives in Raleigh is that Raleigh has some fantastic museums. The art museum is wonderful. They have a beautiful sculpture grounds that with
Mhm.
lots of Rodin. They have a science museum that's fantastic, a history museum that's being renovated. I mean, there's just a lot to offer. And so, and that's only a couple of hours away. So for us, just going and visiting her, we get our little dose of all the museums we want without having to go into Charlotte and wrestle with the traffic there. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. My son and I did a press tour in Raleigh several years ago, and they took us to all the museums.
Yeah.
And while it was exhausting, it was really, really cool for him to
Yeah.
be able to see all the things that were there. And I enjoyed it too. I mean, I didn't
Yeah.
realize exactly that there were so many. And we went to the art museum,
Yeah.
which has that great outdoor area, the great
Yeah,
outdoor
the outdoor
space.
area is fantastic. And in Raleigh, I mean, and in a lot of places in North Carolina are these wonderful parks. I mean, Raleigh has the Olmsted State Park right there, kind of smack in the middle of it between them and Cary and everything else. It's just this giant state park. It's wonderful. And there are little lakes that you can walk around and
Mhm.
it's just beautiful. So there's just a lot of good to be found here. But then again, I'm kind of optimistic and look at the positive in things. And I think you can find beauty everywhere and you can either, you bring to a place what you bring to a place. And if you're coming at it, looking at it from the negatives, oh, the traffic, the this, the that, you're not going to like it. But if you look for the beauty and you look for what's really there, the sweet coffee shops, the people, the the temperate weather, any place can kind of be nice.
Yeah, that's a good point. So before we close, you mentioned that because our podcast is focused on North and South Carolina, that you are available to visit with book clubs who decide to read Mother Love. And you can do that virtually or in person, depending on, how far you would have to travel. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how people can contact you for it?
Sure. Well, it's not just Mother Love. I mean, I love people to read Mother Love because that's my new book, but book clubs also really love When the Moon Winks. That's very amenable to book clubs and has been very popular with book clubs. So I love to meet with groups of people who love to read and to field questions because it's always so interesting to me the kinds of things that people pick up in my books and the questions they ask, which are so, many of these questions come from out of left field, and uh, I never thought about them before. Like I remember one woman asking me well, this wasn't a book club, this was a signing actually, but she asked me, what did I learn when I wrote When the Moon Winks? And the response came out of my mouth, I learned I was funny. And, I mean, I didn't even ever think about that about myself before. But so these events, meeting with people and talking about my books and hearing what they have to say about them, are very fulfilling for me on a very selfish note. So, but I love going and talking to groups, and I can do that either in person. I'll drive to your group if you're within a certain radius, but I can also do it on Zoom, which is easy enough. I have a Zoom account and we can do that. Um, and you can always contact me on my website, lionstoothllc.org, and just leave me a message and say, I'm interested in having you come to our book club, and then we can chat about that and get that set up. And I'm very flexible. My time is very flexible. So,
Okay.
yeah.
We will let people know. And I thank you so much again for being here today and
Well,
sharing
thank
your
you for
thoughts
having
with
me.
me.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
this has been very fun.
This brings us to the conclusion of this episode of Missing in the Carolinas. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and give it a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you'd also like to support the show in a small way, you can buy me a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com, Renee Robertson. Thank you so much for those who have already supported me through this platform. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, so please like our pages and get started on a discussion of the missing people and true crimes profiled on the show. Do you know of a missing persons case or true crime story in North or South Carolina that you think should be covered? Email me at missinginthecarolinas@gmail.com with any details you can share. Cover art for this podcast was designed by Macintosh Multimedia. Sound editing is provided by Daniel Robertson. Thanks so much for listening.